are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am extremely honored to host tonight the incredible S.A. Cosby, Sean Cosby, here to give us the inside scoop about his breakout bestseller, New York Times notable book of the year, instant bestseller, Time Book of the Year. I could go on and on. Out in paperback tomorrow, here to give us the exclusive scoop. Mr. Cosby, welcome. Tell us about Razorblade Tears.
Oh man, thank you. I don't know if I can live up to all that praise. That's a lot going on there. So yeah, basically, first of all, thank you for having me. This is great. It's a pleasure to be here. Basically, Razorblade Tears is a Southern crime fiction noir about two fathers, one black, one white, both ex-cons named Ike Randolph and Buddy Lee Jenkins, who are a path of revenge for the trying to investigate the murders of their sons, who were a gay couple that were married. Neither father accepted their sons for who they were in life, so they are trying to redeem themselves by getting revenge for them in death. And so it's a book about grief, redemption, revenge, violence, the futility of violence, the consequences of violence, tragic and toxic masculinity, and also a story about the South and what it means to be the other in the South. And so I'm just so incredibly honored that so many people have connected with it the way they have.
Well, so many people have connected with it. This book has spoken to so many people in so many ways, and I can't wait to get into so much because you've given us so much to talk about here. So I'm so excited to be able to chat with you today. So thank you so much for joining us. So if you're watching, we are streaming live to 6 different destinations across Facebook and YouTube. So no matter where you're watching from, you're in the right place. This is the right time. And this is your chance to talk to the incredible S.A. Cosby. So ask him anything about his writing process, about writing Buddy Lee and Ike, about their relationships together, their interactions, this quest for justice. So much to talk about. Get it going in the comments and we'll get right over to it. Hey, Shay with the hobbies is in the house. Shay, welcome to the conversation. She says she is super excited for this. It is on her TBR. Shay, you're going to love it. I did. If you're watching from a private Facebook group, I just want to remind you, you'll stay anonymous, very on brand. So we have someone saying, terrific author. Another saying, hello, wonderful authors. This book sounds amazing. I need to get it. Yes, you do. And it is out in paperback tomorrow. I'm going to drop the link in the comments. Instagrammer extraordinaire Christina Powers joining the conversation. Christina, thanks for joining us. She's giving us all the starry eyes. Welcome to the conversation. So Sean, first of all, huge congratulations and thank you for writing this incredibly powerful, incredibly meaningful book. I cried reading it. My heart ached reading it. I winced reading it. It is such a powerful, timely, and unfortunately timeless story. Of course, this week in the news, seeing the Don't Say Gay piece of legislation, excuse me, go through in Florida. So we're seeing this is still very much an issue. Ike and Buddy Lee wrestling with their son's sexuality. We're seeing this is still a problem. So such a timely time to have this conversation. Debbie says she loves the title. How did it come about?
So I like putting titles together that are idiosyncratic, words that don't necessarily go together or don't seem to fit. Like my first book, Blacktop Wasteland. Razorblade Tears is some of that, but it's from a line in the book when Ike is crying after the funeral, and he's in such pain and he's a guy that doesn't cry often, and he says to himself that it felt like tears were like razor blades in his face, and it's such an expression of his profound grief, and I just kind of liked it, and it fit the story, I thought, because it's a story about violence and revenge, but also about, like I said, grief and redemption. So those two words together sort of exemplify what I was trying to do with the book.
I love that. How you said putting together idiosyncratic titles, words that don't necessarily go together. And Ike has that moment where he is grief stricken, mourning the loss of his estranged but beloved son Isaiah. And then in the back of the book, I won't give it away, there's another scene where Ike is wrestling with his grief, crying again, but this time they don't so much feel like Razorblade Tears as another sort of tears, which I'll let our readers experience for themselves. Let's delve a little bit deeper into the title, Sean. When was it the first title that popped in there, or did you have to go through some iterations? What were some that you discarded, if so?
I'll tell you this. I'm sort of a superstitious writer, and so I don't start a project until I got a title that I like. And most times, the first title that pops in my head is the one I go with. I feel like that's just a natural connection to the story. So this book didn't have any other titles. Blacktop Wasteland didn't have any other titles. The book I'm working on now has had a couple iterations, but I don't know, just the idea and the two words together, it really, like I said, exemplified what the book is about. And also, I think, exemplified the journey that Ike and Buddy Lee go on. You know, these are men who are accustomed to violence. This is how they communicate. But at the same time, they're learning and growing and hopefully changing so that they're able to experience their grief in a way that's not counterproductive. It's not uh, violent conflict resolution. And so by the end of the book, they're not perfect, as no one is, but I think they've learned and come a long way um, from the beginning of the book, where they solved every it solved every problem with a garden tool to face. So
Exactly, exactly, and I'm glad you're touching on that issue, that theme of violence, because the book is very violent. So, trigger warning for everybody who's a sensitive reader. It is a violent book, so brace yourself for that. But as the Daily Mail says, it is a rare trick to combine violence with social commentary. But Cosby pulls it off. I could not have said it better myself. The violence is not without reason, not without need for this part in the story. And so while I usually shy away from graphically violent books, I loved this book, and it was so meaningful, so powerful. Okay, Kaylee, welcome to the conversation. She wants to know, has Denzel signed on to direct and star as Ike yet? One of my favorites from 2021, and hello from Minneapolis.
oh man, I wish the book has been optioned for a movie, but there hasn't been anybody attached to it. There's been a couple of I can't I can't really say. There's been a couple of folks that have expressed strong interest in playing some of the roles, but nothing's set in stone yet. But it's been optioned by Paramount Players in conjunction with Jerry Bruckheimer Films. So hopefully we'll be seeing it on the big screen sooner than later.
Yay. And Kaylee, I'm totally seeing Denzel as Ike, right? You can see him playing that tortured, ravaged by life, grief stricken father, but also his heart has room to love. So I'm picking up what you're putting down, Kaylee, and I see Denzel. I love Denzel. I can totally see that him in that role. Okay, another mysterious Facebook user. So welcome. And by the way, you can adjust your privacy settings. I'll drop the link should you want to reveal your identity. No pressure. Would like to know what inspired you to write this, Sean? Anything personal? Yeah, give us the backstory. The hashtag BTS.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, there was two kind of disparate things that inspired the book. One, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and we're we are both writers, and we're both when we were younger, I think we were what you would call ruffians. We rough around the edges, and we were talking about as life moves forward, when you have more yesterdays than you have tomorrows, you think back on the things that you've done or you should have done, and you think about regret and redemption and what that looks like when you're 6 and when you're 25. And so it's that sort of had me started me thinking. And then I have a relative who was is about the same age as I am. And a few years ago, they came out to some family members, and they came out as gay, and it didn't go well. It really didn't. And later on, I was having a beer with this person. They took him out, and we were talking, and they said something that really struck me. As we were talking about the situation, they said, maybe I should just kept it to myself, and that just devastated me because I couldn't imagine not being able to be the full version of myself with people who are supposed to love me unconditionally. If your family can't love you unconditionally, then who can? And so the idea about regret and redemption, and also the idea about homophobia in small towns, and homophobia in the South specifically, there is I think there are four pillars to Southern fiction. There's race, religion, class, and sex. And I've talked about race and class in my previous book, and I wanted to talk about sex and class in this book, and a little bit of religion, because I think there is a sense of somewhat hypocrisy in certain corners of the South when it comes to religion and morality and how they view other people, and the idea of the other, whether it's race or sexuality. Flannery O'Connor is one of my favorite writers. Is often quoted as saying that the South is maybe not Christ centered, but it's Christ haunted, and I think it's haunted by that hypocrisy. And so I wanted to talk about that. And I wrote the book because I grew up with men like Ike and Buddy Lee, men who you would talk to them, they wouldn't think that they're prejudiced. And so I wanted to talk to those folks and talk about the idea that until everybody is free to be who they want to be, then nobody's free. We all win or nobody wins. That's a Michael Conley line, but I think it's very apropos. And so that was the inspiration for the book. And I want to say something real quick about the violence in the book. It is extreme. There's a lot of violence in the book, and I did that on purpose because for Ike and Buddy Lee, their violence is a confession of pain. It's the only way they know how to talk about the absolute soul crushing loss that they're experiencing. I don't have children of my own, but I have a niece that I helped raise that I'm very, very close to. And I just can't imagine somebody hurting her. I can't imagine somebody doing something to her. And so, even though I'm not Ike and Buddy Lee, I understand people like that's the only way they know how to express themselves. And as I said, as the book goes on, the two of them learn from each other to express themselves in different ways. The conversations that they have, they learn to talk
Mhm.
about their feelings. They still visit uh a terrible vengeance on their enemies, but the two of them learn to accept people for who they are, and to be better men. And so I hope that come for the violence, but stay for the heartfelt conversations.
Yes, yes. Come for the violence, stay for the heartfelt conversations. And seeing Ike and Buddy Lee, but especially Ike, evolve, especially within the context of his relationship with Tangerine, aka Tangy, is one of my favorite um parts of the book, one of my favorite elements. I just loved how they ended up. Um
Hmm.
really, really lovely. But I love how you said that, because you're right. And when you said at the beginning that that one of the things you wanted to address was, of course, the homophobia, giving, if until we are all free, none of us are free, all of that. But toxic masculinity, yes, that we are raising a culture of boys, that this is, it's more acceptable to say it with your fist than it is to sit and cry. And
Hmm.
there's all of these
Hmm.
narratives around don't be a sissy, and all of this other toxic
Hmm. Hmm. Exactly.
crap. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. I think also there's such a thing as tragic masculinity, that this idea that your
Ooh.
inability to communicate doesn't just hurt people outside of you, it hurts you. It hurts you as an individual. Holding on to the anger and the recrimination that comes with trying to prove how tough you are is ultimately a defeatist point of view. You'll never be as tough as you think you need to be. It's always going to be somebody out, uh, not to be vulgar, but it's all gonna be on somebody that they can whip your butt. And so you're never gonna be as tough as you think you should be. And so you need to learn how to work through that. I don't think I'm not a pacifist. I think, you gotta defend yourself, you gotta defend yourself. But I think learning to talk and learning to communicate and learning to see things from another person's point of view is so ultimately more healthy and freeing. And once you get that point of view, and once you can do that, it's like a millstone being released from around your neck.
Oh, I love that. What do you think is key for us to support the transition from toxic masculinity and tragic masculinity, a term I had not heard until just now. How do we help our boys and men to be able to be their that softer self, to speak, to be okay being sad and hurt and not just turning to violence? What do we do about that?
I think for me, I think we have to make boys understand that it's okay to cry. It's okay to talk about your feelings. It's okay to talk about being depressed. It's okay to talk about being sad. This idea that you have to be this, John Wayne, Gary Cooper paragon of, masculinity. It's I think it's just untenable nowadays. It's nothing wrong with being open and being gentle and being someone who can talk about how they feel. And I think what we have to do is I think we have to understand that our individual definitions of masculinity are not affected by somebody else's. My definition of masculinity is not affected by a gay couple down the street or a non-binary couple down the street or a trans individual. It's my personal walk, my personal journey. And you got to stop measuring that against other people's experiences. Find what works for you and find how you define it and live with that and live through that. And just also
Mm.
understand that not everything deserves a response. Not everything deserves, I'll tell you a real quick story. When I was a kid, when
What's
I
the
was about
story,
17,
Sean?
like I said, I was a ruffian and I got into trouble and I was in a, I should have, first of all, I shouldn't have been in a bar, but I was in a bar and I got in a bar fight. And I called my mom because the sheriff was gonna take me downtown, and my mom said, "I'm gonna come get you. I'm gonna get somebody to come get you." And she said, "But," and she told me this. She's like, because at this time I was talking about wanting to be a writer, and she said, "I think you can do what you said you want to do, but you're not gonna convince anybody with your fists." And so, and that was a turning point for me as a person, not just a writer, but as a man. And I just started thinking, you can't win every fight. You can't. And as time goes on, the possibility of you hurting somebody or you getting hurt increases exponentially. Again, if you got to
Mm.
defend yourself. But life is too
Mm.
short life is too short to let things get you riled up. If somebody steps on your shoes, let it go. It's not that big a deal. And so I think boys need to understand that. And I think they need to realize that you're not any less of a man if you let something go, if you walk away. And I
Mm.
think each person has to find that individual path. I think we all have to find that path ourselves.
Oh, Sean Cosby dropping gems. Stephanie Cooper, welcome to the conversation. Books to Grammar Extraordinaire. She is at Fire Pit Books. She says, drop the link. Stephanie, ask and you shall receive. Here's the link, y'all. The book is out tomorrow. The paperback is out tomorrow. Pre-order your copy now, and you can dive into this book with us. Razorblade Tears. Grab it right now. Here's the link. No matter where you're watching from, grab it, because you are gonna wanna read this book. Trust me on that. Polly Helms, welcome to the conversation. She said, thank you so much. She wishes that everyone would understand that. What you are speaking, what you are preaching, what you are sharing. Sean, yes. Polly, yes. This is Courtney, Bookstagram Extraordinaire. She is at Caffeine and Reads. She is at, this is such an insightful interview, making taboo things okay or normal. I love this. Courtney, thank you so much. Welcome to the conversation. Anissa Joy Armstrong, welcome to the conversation, ma'am. She would like to know, while you were writing, were there scenes that were so intense to you that you had to step away and return later to those scenes? If so, what are they, Sean?
It's funny. The violent scenes never get me because I feel like my characters are justified in their expressions of violence. But for people that read the book, the last scene in the book, it was very difficult to write. It really was. And I struggled with that scene a lot. The scene at there's a scene in the book where Buddy Lee is in the hospital and Ike is visiting him and something's happened and there's a confession that Buddy Lee makes, and that was very difficult to write because that confession, it it affects their burgeoning friendship very deeply. And it was hard to write that scene because I'd done this thing where I built them up. They were getting closer and closer, and they were becoming friends. And then Buddy Lee has to tell him something that damages that, and that was hard to write. But the last scene was really hard to write. It was difficult. I struggle with that scene because not only do you want to create an interesting or memorable last line, but I wanted to make sure that the characters that survive are in a good place, and that they're not perfect. A book is a snapshot of your character's life. There's stuff that happened before the book started, and there's stuff that happens after the book ends. And so I just wanted to make sure I left them in a good space, in a good place, despite how difficult the journey was. And so that was difficult to write as well.
Well, I always know when a scene has been a labor of love because the hairs on the back of my neck stand up and I get goosebumps on my arms. And when I read that scene and another one, which I will reveal because it'll give stuff away, but it's almost near the end. I got those goosebumps and those tears, and so all of your efforts are so worth it because through the pages of a book, through paper made from trees, you are making us cry, you are making us have these reactions, and what an incredible accomplishment for you to be affecting so many people like this is amazing. Here we have, I recognize, hi, Josie Glosson. She says, I will buy anything this author writes. Yes, ma'am. Right? Sean Cosby is a master, and the paperback is out tomorrow. I'm dropping the link in the comments again. So grab it, everybody, if you haven't gotten it already, because it is that good. Okay, so many questions are coming in. This is definitely a best book of the year. This one also from Josie Glosson. Josie, thank you so much. Sue, great question. She'd like to know, did you have the entire plot in your mind when you when you sat down to write this, or did the characters take you to unexpected places? Great question, Sue. So Sean, answer the question and then walk us through your process. Are you a plotter? Are you a pantser? Do you hear voices? Tell us all the things.
Mhm. So I had the general idea when I sat down to write it. I had, I knew where I wanted to go, but there were characters that surprised me. I didn't I didn't expect Ike and Buddy Lee to get as close as they did. I thought it would still I thought it would end up being a somewhat reluctant friendship. But 3/4 of the way in the book, they're like brothers. And so I didn't know that was gonna happen. Um Tangerine surprised me because I thought she would be more of an ancillatory character, um, that would be mysterious. But once we find her and once we meet her, she really stands out on her own, and she's the character I think that other than Ike's wife that really calls Ike and Buddy Lee out, where she basically tells him, you're doing all this because you didn't love your sons enough in life, and that's not my responsibility. And I thought that she just really stood on her own 2 feet and really, even though I think she's someone who was damaged and has her own, and I say damaged because she's in love with someone who doesn't love her back. And I think that's
Mm.
an incredibly painful position to be in. And I think we've all been there. And so even though she's dealing with that, she still has enough wherewithal to stand up to Ike and Bailey and call them out for what they've done wrong. And they need that.
Mm.
They need to be called out like that, because despite their journey of revenge, they've made mistakes. Parents aren't perfect, and I think that once we realize that, it can be a difficult understanding that parents aren't perfect. There's a point in your life where your parents are superheroes, and then there's a point in your life where you realize they're human and they make mistakes. And so
Mm.
I thought they needed to be called out. And as far as the other parts, as far as my process, I'm not a pantser. I'm somewhat of a plotter. I'm more of a hybrid. Because what I do is I don't write an outline, but I do write a pretty extensive synopsis, and I'll write that out. It's usually 3 or 4 pages, and the book doesn't necessarily have to follow that synopsis exactly. That's more of just a roadmap to kind of give me an idea of where I want to go. But for me
Mm.
personally, I can't write a book or story until I can see it in total and see it in full. I have to see the beginning, the
Mm.
middle, and the end. Now, the ending isn't always the same as I started with, but I at least have to see where it's going to go. And as far as
Mm.
voices, I don't think characters talk to me, but I do get into sort of a, I don't know, a hypnotic state when I'm writing. Like when it's really, really good. Yeah, I do feel like I'm in another place when the words are coming out really good. So that's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue, for that great question. And Sean, thank you for the wonderful answer. I liked how you said that you were surprised how the friendship between Buddy Lee and Ike evolved because you thought it would be more of a reluctant friendship, but they ended up like brothers. So they get off to a rather rocky start on their first day of working together
Yeah.
when Ike's driving his truck, giving Buddy Lee a ride, and Buddy Lee asks if he listens to any country music, and they have a moment where Ike says, "Oh,
Yeah.
because you don't think I listen to country because I'm black," and then Buddy Lee says, "Well, your kind usually doesn't," and that that is a tense moment. I was
Mhm.
sweating. What, how did you, so
Yeah.
that is how you sort of start to work us into, well, actually it starts even before that. But there's these moments where when
Mhm.
they're having their fried catfish at the drive-in place, and
Mhm.
and a truck drives by with a Confederate flag in the back of the window. There's all of these
Mhm.
moments where it's not a big explosive moment, and we know you have those explosive moments too, literally, but they are powerful and they get the point across. How did you do it in such a way that didn't feel like you were clobbering us over the head with it, but I mean, it's painful, it hurts. You get it away across so powerfully. Did you weave those in later? I need a little more amping up the tension here, or did those just come out and you wrote around them? How did that go?
They just came out naturally. Those conversations, those interactions are interaction I think a lot of people have, especially in rural areas in the rural South. In a rural area, a lot of times people. It's a small town, it's 10,000 people, it's 8,000 people. So you have a working knowledge of everybody that lives there, between your friends and your cousins, your coworkers, and what have you. And sometimes you have those kind of hard conversations. I've had those kind of hard conversations. I've had those difficult conversations with folks that I worked with or folks that I knew. And I think we need more of those conversations. I think we need more of those difficult conversations. Not necessarily Buddy Lee
Mm,
assuming Ike doesn't like country music, but the idea of we're different, but we're also similar. For me, like living in the South, I have more in common in some areas with you know, folks that white folks that I grew up when I went to school with than I had with anybody else. Because we lived in the area, we grew up in this area, we've known each other all our lives. And sometimes some people don't see that, and so I wanted to kind of illustrate that. I wanted to talk about the similarities, but also the difference that exist. I think like a guy like Buddy Lee, he doesn't believe in white privilege, but like Ike tries to explain to him, you know. White privilege doesn't mean you're successful. You know,
mhm.
white privilege is not success. White privilege is the fact that your life doesn't necessarily have to be easy because you're white, but it's never difficult because you are. And so there's a conversation where him and Ike are talking about, Buddy Lee's looking at Ike's truck. Ike has a nice truck. He has a big, F-250 dually, and around these parts, that's a nice truck. And Buddy Lee's like, I'll trade places with you. And Ike's like, yeah, but you get pulled over by the cops. I go to a jewelry store, I get followed around looking for something for my wife. And so he has to explain to Buddy Lee that aspect. And I did something later in the book. This isn't a spoiler. There's a conversation later in the book where Buddy Lee is sort of coming around to understanding that, and he tells
Mm,
Ike a story about watching the Ten Commandments, the Charlton Heston movie on television, and his grandfather makes a racist joke in the middle of that show, and Buddy Lee tells Ike, I laughed at that when I was a kid. That was my granddad. I loved him,
mm,
and if I could laugh at that, if he could make that kind of joke, what does that say about me? And Ike says, it says, your granddad was a bad person, but you're learning. And then Buddy Lee
mm.
says, "Oh, it's pretty late in the day to be learning," and Ike says, "Well, the day ain't over yet." And I think it's never too late to learn. It's never too late to change. But you gotta work at it. Redemption is not a gift. Redemption is like a 1,000-piece puzzle, and you got to put it together
Mm,
yourself. Nobody gives
mm.
you that, and you got to be willing to do the work. And guys like Ike and Buddy Lee, through tragedy, they've been forced to do the work. And so that was sort of the message I was trying to get across. But nobody wants 300-page sermon. So you have to add, energy and fun and a little bit of humor and stuff in there. A little bit of honey makes the medicine go down. So you want to create an interesting story, but also you can talk about themes that are important to you. And I try to always talk about themes that are important to me.
Well, you certainly did, and you did it in a way that resonates with so many people. The scene I think you started off talking about is exactly like Buddy Lee. Is single. He's living in a trailer, in a very rundown trailer park. He's looking at Ike with his F-150, and he owns his house and he owns a business. And he's got a staff of 15 people, and he says, "Well, you're doing so much better than me." And green's the only color. So by money, you're doing better. You're doing better than me. And I love that moment between them, because it's like, yeah, but what's been my path to get here? How much harder have I had to work? How much more rockier has my path been? And it was so fascinating to see that, to witness this conversation and to see it. And you paint it so deftly and so efficiently. You're very efficient with your words. I feel like one thing I'm working on as a writer and just as a talker is I tend to talk around things to make sure I'm really being understood, and you just get it across, but we're going to receive it. So I really admire that as well. Leslie is saying hello from Canada, giving us her signature Canadian
hello.
Hello. Anissa saying hello, Sarah and Sean. This was such a great book. Stephanie Cooper saying, hey, I watched you when you did a Q&A with Jennifer Hillier. I totally loved you two together. Now you are my favorite interviewer extraordinaire. Yay. Wait a minute, Stephanie. I thought I was your favorite interviewer extraordinaire. Monica Boy saying hi. Hi, Monica. Welcome to the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. I see LA Chandler is watching with us as well. Hey, Laurie. So great to have you here. Another fabulous author. Welcome to the conversation, making sure that I am not missing anybody's comments. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for joining us. Just scrolling through here. Let me see if anybody has any other questions. I want to make sure that I get everybody here. Yay. Okay. I want to make sure I'm catching everybody's everything. Thank you all for watching. Sue saying, one of my favorite books this year, the authenticity of your characters is really wonderful. I can't wait for the next book that you're working on. Sean, can you tell us anything about that? Or are you superstitious and you don't talk about it till later?
Oh, no. No, I talk about it all the time. I actually post excerpts on social media from the thing I'm working on, so that I gauge how people react to the excerpts to see if people are connecting with it. So the new thing I'm working on is Southern Gothic murder mystery called All the Sinners Bleed, and the elevator pitch, as they say. So basically, it's a story of Titus Crown. He's the first black sheriff in a small southern town.
Okay, wait, Sean,
On the
you
1 year
froze?
anniversary of his election, there. All right, I'm sorry. Living out in the country, bad internet. But anyway, on the 1 year anniversary of his election, there's a shooting at the local high school, and he goes to investigate it, and a teacher is killed by a former student. But in the course of the investigation, Titus finds out that the teacher, the former student, and a third mystery person were a trio of serial killers. And so he's investigating this serial murder that happens in his town, while at the same time he's getting prepared for a far right march to defend the Confederate statue in town as well. So these two things are happening at the same time. And so he has to kind of navigate both of these incredibly intense situations while also dealing with some issues from his own past that he's having a hard time dealing with. So it's a story about the South, about race, about religion, but also about our personal journey and leaving our mistakes in the past. But like Faulkner said, the past is never really dead. It's not even really the past. So those are all themes that I'm trying to work on now, and so I'm hoping to be done with it probably by the middle of the year. And I'm really enjoying it. I think Titus is an interesting character. It's allowing me to talk, like I said, about religion, about sex, about policing, about small town interactions, and I'm just really really excited about it.
Yay! Oh, Sean, thank you so much for that sneak peek. And tell us the title one more time.
All the Sinners Bleed.
Ooh, so same with this one. You had to wait till you had the title to.
Cults, and somebody said in there about a cult leader who had made reference to the fact that only the sinners bleed, and in reference to some cult activity. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting title. That has a kind of dark esotericness to it. So I
Yeah.
thought that'd be a cool title for the project, and it sort of fits what I want to talk about because religion is such a big part of Southern experience and Southern living. I grew up
Mm,
in, I was raised Southern Baptist in a Pentecostal church, and so the idea that religion is such a part of the fabric of small town Southern life, but at the same time, we're all human, and there's a lot of hypocrisy, a lot of
mm,
double dealing when it comes to that religion and how religion is used politically, sociologically, to
mm.
shape a town's personality. And so I kind of want to talk about that. Titus is a character who is a atheistic leaning agnostic, but he used to be very, very religious. And his mother died when he was young, and she was very religious. And so her dying kind of broke his faith. And so this
Mm.
isn't a spiritual story. It's not a story of his spiritual journey, but it is a story talking about how religion just is an all-encompassing thing in the South. I live in a small
Mm.
town. I live in a town of 9,000 people. There are 26 churches here. And so it's just this idea of
Wow.
how religion impacts the South and how it impacts our individual journeys, like I said, politically, sociologically, intimately. And so it's something that I have wanted to talk about for a while. And I think if I survived all the mean emails I got for Razorblade Tears, I can survive this. So
Well, we've got your back, Sean. We've got your back. Sue
thank
would
you,
like
thank
to
you.
know, how hard is it to write characters so different from yourself? You really brought a wide variety of humanity to the party here, and well done. Sue, wide variety of humanity is the perfect way to say it. Sean, was it hard to write Tangerine, Buddy Lee, Maya? I mean, so many very different characters. How was that?
It's difficult, but I think if you do the research, the proper research, if you invest your characters with um, character traits and not caricatures, I think it becomes easier. You have to tell the truth of your characters, even the bad guys, like even Grayson, who's a terrible person, but you have to tell their truth. He doesn't think of himself as a villain. He's the head of a motorcycle gang. He loves his brothers, even though he's mean to them. He thinks he's the hero, and I don't think necessarily that you have to tell his version of a hero's journey. Excuse me, but even a character like that, you have to understand where they're coming from. You don't have to empathize with it. You just have to understand it. And I
Mm,
think sometimes people don't get that. I don't have to empathize with Grayson or Winston Culpepper or any of those characters, but I do have to understand their point of view, and that can be
mm.
difficult. That can be emotionally draining sometimes because it's not fun being in those thoughts. There's a movie I really love called Manhunter, starring William L. Peterson. It was the first film version of Red Dragon by Thomas L. Harris. And there's a line in there where William L. Peterson is telling his son what he does for a living. He's an FBI profiler. And he talks about how he has to think bad thoughts sometimes. And his son's like, are they really bad thoughts? He's like, they're the worst ones. And so sometimes it's hard. You don't want to think those thoughts. You don't want to be in that person's head.
Mm.
But I think you owe it to the reader to tell the truth. I think that's the thing about writing, regardless of what you write, whether it's crime fiction, literary fiction, historical dramas. Your
Mm.
job as a writer, you're tasked to tell the truth, and sometimes the truth
Yes.
hurts. And so it's difficult. It can be difficult, but I think it's necessary. And I think it's funny because it never comes easily to me, but it comes naturally. I, and I think that's sort of a thing that you have to have. Like I think some people can tell stories and some people can't. And it's just like being able to play piano by ear. I'm not necessarily saying I have that, but
Mm.
I think that is definitely something that is true when it comes to the arts. And
Ooh.
I'm very, 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 very blessed that I have a little bit of that. There are writers who can do it way better than I can, I mentioned like Thomas R. Harris and Jordan Harper as a writer that I admire, Donald Ray Pollock, Megan Abbott. These are writers who go to very dark places with very dark characters and create these characters that, they're the high bar I'm trying to reach. I want to get my characters there as well. Again, creating these dark characters doesn't mean that you empathize or sympathize with them. It just means that you're able to understand the full width and breadth of the panoply of human emotions. And so I think that's a writer's job as well. So.
Ooh, Sean, taking us to church. Okay, we have a very special question now from a young woman, Miss Avery Olson, 15 years old and watching us tonight. Avery, welcome to the conversation. She would like to know, Sean, what inspired you to become an author?
All right, I've told this story before, and it's kind of funny. My mom, when I was a kid, when I was like 5 or 6, my mom loved reading, fairy tales to me, bedtime stories, and I was such a stickler for plot points even back then, and so I would pick at the plots of stories that she would tell me. And I think I was around 8 years old when she said, you should write your own story, because you're tearing these poor stories apart. You're looking for plot holes. I was the kid that was like, why didn't the three pigs just move? That kind of stuff. And so I started writing when I was 8 years old. And when I was 10, I wrote a story about I wrote a story about these elves that were fighting these gnomes that lived in the magnolia tree in our front yard. And the elves and the gnomes had this long war. And then there were some time travelers that showed up, and it's a terrible story. But I let my mom read it. And the look on her face when she was reading it, that's the high I'm still chasing. I loved seeing my words affect her. I saw her laugh, I saw her frown, I saw her eyes widen, and that made me realize that words have power. And I don't mean power like in a nefarious way. It it made me realize you can affect somebody with what you say, what comes out of your mind. And ever since then, I just wanted to be a writer, and it was a lot of ups and downs, but eventually we got here. And my mom unfortunately has passed away, but she saw Blacktop Wasteland. She saw the beginning of Razorblade Tears and the success that it had, and she just your mom's your first fan. She's the first person to believe in you. And I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for her. So.
Well, Miss Avery Olson, thank you for that wonderful question. And Sean, thank you for that answer, from the elves in the tree in your front yard to a billboard in Times Square. I think it's safe to say you have made it, sir. You have made it. Michelle, welcome to the conversation. She said she's late, but she's so happy to see Sean. She loved the audiobook of Razorblade Tears. It was absolutely fantastic. Michelle, thank you so much. Margaret Pernard, welcome to the conversation. She said the commentary on this one sounds amazing. Margaret, it is amazing. You have to read this book. Stephanie Cooper saying, she's clarifying, I'm still her favorite interviewer extraordinaire, but you're her favorite author, Sean. We can live with that, Stephanie. Okay, you're off the hook. She's clarifying that he is her favorite writer is her favorite writer is with her favorite interviewer. Yay! Anissa saying, thank you both for this wonderful conversation. Sue, wondering where on social media we can read the new snippets. Do you post those on Twitter or Instagram or both?
Yeah. They're on Twitter and Facebook and Facebook and Instagram. So they're all over the place. I just put some on Twitter the other day. But yeah, I like posting the snippets and excerpts, and I kind of gauge how.
So on Twitter, everybody, Sean is Black Lion King 73. So everybody hop over and follow him there. Alan Nunnally saying it is so impressive how you tackle such socially relevant topics while weaving them into incredible stories. Thank you for bringing them to us. Alan, thank you for the comment so much. Polly saying she lives in a town of less than 5,000 and they still have 26 churches. Polly, I'm guessing you're down south too. Sue would like to know, why do you go by S.A. Cosby and not Sean? Ooh, getting in there, Sue. Getting in there.
Okay. So here's the answer to that question. When I first started writing, I wanted to be sort of mysterious. I didn't do that. Like, I know some writers do that because they don't want to reveal their gender or whatever. I didn't do it because of that. I just wanted to have like a little. I was thinking of JD Salinger. So I wanted to kind of have that sort of mysterious ethos around me. And
Oh no, we're losing you again.
sorry,
Oh, good. You're back. You're back.
I'm so sorry. All
No,
right,
no, no.
so
You're
I'll tell it
fine.
real quick. When I got my agent, he asked me, he says, "Do you want to go by Essay or you want to go by Sean?" And I said, "Well, I'll just keep going by Essay. It's no big deal." He said, "I'm telling you." He had faith in me. He said, "This book is going to hit, and you're going to be S.A. Cosby for the rest of your career." I didn't listen, so I'm S.A. Cosby for the rest of my career. But it's all right. I like it. It's still kind of mysterious. I think I still kind of try to have an air of mystery around me a little bit. So, although with social media, I think everybody knows everything about me. So,
Well, we like to know you, Sean. Alan's saying that he had the same question about the pigs. Shay would like to know. She said, "It is my go to question, but she's got to know what is a fiction book that you think, you, Sean, master of craft,
oh wow,
what do you think is an excellent example of craft?"
mm, there's so many. Um,
Mm,
I'll give you my two that I go to a lot. Donald Ray Pollock's "The Devil All the Time" and
okay.
Ernest J. Gaines' "A Gathering of Old Men." Both of those books are rural stories. They're not really crime stories per se, but they're
Mm,
stories that examine the intricacies of rural living. And I think they
mm,
both do an incredible job of dissecting what makes a good story. They
mm.
tell a story. The best stories, the best books are like somebody sitting around a bonfire or sitting in a bar that waves you over and like, hey, let me tell you something. Listen to this.
Yes.
And those books have that kind of conversational feel, even though they're talking about incredibly dark and sometimes twisted things, but they
Mm.
make you feel like an old friend that's telling this story, like I said, around a campfire with a couple of cold beers. And so those are two books that I go to a lot. I think one more is I think Darkness Take My Hand by Dennis Lehane. Um,
Mm.
Dennis Lehane is just he's on my Mount Rushmore with Elmore Leonard and Walter Mosley and Sue Grafton. He's just one of the great,
Mm.
not only great mystery and PI writers, but just one of the great writers of all time. And Darkness Take My Hand is it's a perfect book to me. It's a perfect book. It has a
Wow.
perfect beginning, a perfect middle, a perfect ending. It breaks all the rules. They tell you don't have a prologue. It's got a prologue. They tell you don't have an epilogue. It has an epilogue. It reveals the villain halfway through. It changes stories. It, it changes plots like a quarter of the way through the book. It goes from being a private eye trying to find a kidnapped person to being hunted by a serial killer. And but he's just it's so deft and so sure and
Wow.
it's just beautiful. I say that because it's such a brutal book, but it's such a beautifully brutal book. It's violence is poetry, and I just love it so much.
Wow. So all the way from the Bayou to Boston, you're picking your favorite authors there, Sean. We're picking up what you're putting down. We are here for it. I want to thank you all for joining us for this incredible special pre-launch event. I want to remind y'all the book is out tomorrow. The paperback book is out tomorrow. So grab your copy tonight, y'all, because you are going to love this book. I'm popping the link in the comments one more time because you've got to read this book. New York Times Notable Book of the Year, NPR Book of the Year, Washington Post Best Mystery and Thriller of the Year, Instant New York Times Bestseller. My God, I could go on, and I can and I will. I'm popping all of this praise into the links because you want to read and relish and revel in how this book is being received. It is so powerful. Sean, thank you for joining us on the night before your paperback is out. What a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for all your amazing questions and comments and your presence and your praise and letting us know how this book has landed with you or how you're excited to read this book. If you haven't gotten it yet, It's really amazing to see how this book has resonated and then rippled out like a rock you just threw in a quiet lake, and it's just rippling out and impacting us in the most beautiful way. So Sean Cosby, please come back and speak with us when All Sinners Bleed comes out. Michelle saying months later, the characters are still so vivid to her. Michelle, that's the great. Yeah, Sean, tell us.
I just want to say thank you all so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. Thank you everyone that joined. Thank you for the readers that have connected with the book. Writing a book sometimes is like telling yourself a joke for 9 months and then hoping everybody else gets the punchline. You don't know how people are going to connect with it. And I get so many for all the mean emails I get. It's not a lot. I get so many beautiful emails from folks that are like, "Hey, I haven't talked to my dad in 12 years, and this book made me want to talk to him. And I sent my
Oh,
mom this book, and we
oh,
understand each other better." And or people that just read it and they're like, "I read this book." I got an email from a guy who's like 70, and he said, "I read your book. I gave up writing when I was in my 20s. I'm gonna finish my book now." And it's like, what can you say? That's what you do it for, I think. For
oh.
me, I mean, don't get me wrong, the money's nice, but just having that connection with people is incredible, and I'm just so grateful. You gotta love it, and you gotta enjoy it while it lasts. And I'm definitely trying to. My mama used to say the shine wears off of new pennies quick, so you enjoy it and you never take it for granted. So thank you all so much.
Oh, Sean, what a pleasure this has been, and what a treasure you are. Sue saying, please, please keep writing. Yes, absolutely. The world needs your stories. I want to remind y'all the paperback is out tomorrow. If you've already read it, buy it for a friend, buy it for 5 friends. Get your birthday shopping, your Christmas shopping, get it all done now. Spread the work of this beautiful book and this incredibly talented writer that we are so honored to have. Sean Cosby, thank you. And please come back and talk with us next time when All Sinners Bleed comes out.
I would love to. Thank you so much for having me. Good night, everybody. Everybody have a great night. Thank you again. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
sir. Bye bye.